All right, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Waking Up with Wandy, hosted by the Stock Showdown. I, your host, Wandy, here on a wonderful Thursday afternoon, March the 3rd, 2022, here in beautiful Sparta, New Jersey. My guest, however, on the complete opposite coast, hailing from Reno, Nevada, we have Chandler Walker here with us this afternoon. Very excited to have Chandler. A little bit of background on Chandler. His entrepreneurial journey started after he graduated over there on the other side of the country from the University of Nevada with a degree in biochemistry. And he was forging his way to a pathway down the medical field to pursue a brick and mortar wellness facility. Due to the COVID stuff that happened over 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago, I think we're right about 2 years out now. He kind of pivoted, and that's kind of why we have Chandler Walker on the show today, is to kind of find out his journey on how he was able to pivot from something that he was passionate about pursuing probably for many years and spending a lot of resources, whether that be time and money, to pursue one thing, and kind of pivoted because of the lockdowns and because of COVID. And we're really excited to hear how this journey has unfolded for Chandler. So without further ado, everybody, thank you, Chandler Walker, for joining us on the show. I'll give you a round of applause, Chandler.
Yeah, let's go. This is exciting. Happy to be here. Hopefully we can give everybody some value and some exciting stuff and some tidbits that they walk away with. And at the end of the day, they're like, wow, Chandler's a cool dude. I could trust this guy, and we can take over the world together on this little segment.
All right, so let's dive right into it, Chandler. Again, love the energy. I bring it as well, so I think we complement each other well here. So you graduated from University of Nevada. Forgive me. I think what's his face went there. That guy, Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, Kaepernick, he did.
Yeah, he's a former. Hold on. Wolfpack. Is it the Nevada Wolfpack?
Yep, the Wolfpack.
Oh, geez. Now it all makes sense with Alan from The Hangover when he's saying that he's got a one-man Wolfpack. It all makes sense.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I never realized it until this very moment. I mean, forgive my ignorance, I guess, but now it makes sense. The Nevada Wolfpack over there. So how did the journey start for you?
Yeah, so growing up, I had a mom who suffered from bipolar disorder. And so there was a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And as a kid, I kind of had to learn how to communicate with her in sort of a neutral way. So instead of getting upset with her, I had to recognize that there was a disease present, which we didn't know about, and had to learn how to ask questions, how to walk her off the cliff, how to help her out. And ultimately, this led me to sort of want to find a way to dive deeper into solving problems in mental health in the medical world, because she didn't actually figure out anything was going on with her until my 20s when I was in college. Because back then, mental health was like, if you talked about it, you were stupid. You just had to put a smile on your face and pretend like nothing was wrong. And so I just didn't like the way the world treated the mental health issues that we still have today, that are getting worse. And so that led me into a world of going to college and university for biochemistry. I was pretty good at negotiating with my advisors after growing up and being able to negotiate and work with my mom. So I negotiated my way from a biology degree to a biochemistry, to combining biochemistry with immunology and combining that with sort of microbiology. And essentially I had my create your own adventure in college. And so a little tidbit to kids listening to this, you can create your own adventure. And the key to doing that is communication. If you can communicate and not get angry and really come to an agreement with people, you'll get whatever you want. And I think that's one of the keys to really being successful. But so what I did was I got through the medical school pathway, and I was precepting at University Medical Center down in Vegas. And I felt like all I was doing was sitting there giving medication for a living. And the reason I got into the medical field wasn't necessarily to give medication for a living. And this isn't a shot at doctors, it's the system. You can't tell someone to eat an apple or you're going to get sued for malpractice because that apple didn't make them feel better instantly. And so I just felt like at that point, I had to shift. I just couldn't do this because this isn't what I got in the game for. So I pivot shifted and I adjusted and I moved into opening up a brick and mortar where we helped people in mental health, social health, sleep, nutrition, fitness, and habits. So we were able to help people in a holistic way and exactly the way I wanted to actually help them and create change in the world.
Now, I think you can attest to this, that over the last 2 years, have you seen an influx of customers who, have placed an emphasis more on mental health than ever before? Have you noticed an influx, or has it been pretty stable throughout?
Yeah. So when we pivot shifted and we were able to move the brand online just before, like 6 months before COVID. And so now I'm going to tell everybody that I predicted COVID. That's why I sold and moved my business, and we adjusted, which is not true, but it sounds cool. But then we pivot shifted and adjusted and moved into the online realm during COVID, and we grew by like 1,800% because we were already working on solving the mental health issues that we're facing. The people were already inundated with, but now they were stuck at home and they didn't have other humans to communicate with. And the idea of not seeing humans was not so magical in this world. So we grew a lot in that realm. And then now fast forward to today, where we have this explosion of mental health related issues. The system can't handle it. It takes 8 weeks on average to see a psychiatrist, if you can even get in to see one, or a psychologist. And so we don't have the capabilities to handle the problems that we're seeing today. So on our side, in our private sector program, we're seeing people come to us all the time. They want to get past emotional eating patterns. They want to get past the thought of looking in the mirror and hating who they see. They want to get past so many different issues that they haven't been able to solve because there's no one there that can help them.
We have the benefit, the school I work at, it's a technical school, and there is a specific entity that works not with the school. Well, they work with the students of the school, but they're on their own grant, and it's all sort of mental health clinicians that are under this grant. And I can't emphasize enough the benefit of having, I think there's, I'm going to say 4 to 5 full-time mental health clinicians on staff at my school, which, maybe again, pre-COVID, maybe not necessary, but ever since COVID, oh my, explosion of kids in need of that, because the social interaction that they were lacking for 2 years has placed did such a blow to everybody, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of flipped everything upside down and just magnified the problem and just created this implosion and this internal implosion that we don't know how to solve just yet. And so it's really good to see schools and a lot of programs putting mental health pieces into their programs and into their practices and into what they're doing, because then it takes the stress off like the overall system and helps solve problems as they present themselves internally.
So now going back to, your college education and the way that you were able to basically create your path, it seems rather unconventional. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. The way that you were taking classes to kind of, again, mold it into what you really wanted to do. And you place an emphasis on strong communication with those professors and not, again, being deterred by any sort of negativity, that you basically took no for an answer, did not take no for an answer. You kept pursuing to get it into a way that fit what you wanted to do, which, kudos to you. It sounds like you're one hell of a salesman.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Growing up, like in school, people always told me, you have to do this one thing. You can't change your mind. You can't adjust. If you ask questions, you're dumb or something like that. And so, but I never kind of fell into that. I guess I can attest back to the communication with my mom and being a good salesman, that it's okay to change your mind and it's okay to pivot shift and it's okay to adjust, because I didn't really recognize what I wanted to do till post-college, when I was already in doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so I think one of the biggest things that you figure out is the better you can communicate. And in college, I saved all of my syllabuses. I saved every credit hour that I had and everything that defined what it was. So that way it was negotiation material to take to my advisors to show them how it made sense with what I wanted to do and then pitch my case. It was almost like pitching investors for a startup. And they would always come out and be like, all right, we're going to let this one go. And then it was like 87 credits later, they're all let go and I'm able to do whatever I wanted, essentially. So it's like, if you're good at this, if you can save your syllabuses, save everything you do, understand save the course materials, and then present it and show how it makes sense in conjunction with what you want to do and what you want to move it to, they can't really say no, because like on the other end, they're not really in science. They're not really that good at arguing. They're not going to be able to rebut what you say. And so it's like, you can do exactly what you want to do. You just have to be strong enough in your ability to communicate how you want it to look.
So again, I deal with high school students, and let's just say the art of negotiation, public speaking, the thought of rejection does not sit well with, I'd say, a good majority of high school students. How do we overcome that? How do we get students stronger at these negotiation skills, salesmanship, like I said, negotiation? How do we develop our students' confidence to be better at that? Any insight?
Yeah, I think it's culture, because when you look at questions being asked in school, if you're wrong, you have that fear that your peers are going to like burn you at the stake. You have that fear that being wrong makes you stupid. You have that fear that, oh, if I'm wrong on this, then I look bad. And so I think what we have to do is we have to flip that upside down and ask people to answer questions wrong. Legitimately tell them to give us the wrong answers and then argue why that should be correct. Because that's a beautiful strategy, because what happens? They get comfortable answering questions wrong. They get comfortable just answering questions, and then they get comfortable arguing their point, which puts them in a really neat place, because then they learn how to argue a point that might not even be correct and be confident enough to get people to believe it, which I guess could lead to manipulation, but at the same time gets people confident enough to actually speak and to actually say, okay, I could be wrong, but here's why I could be right.
That's never heard that approach, but I think I might try to use that when I return back to school in 3.5 weeks. Is give the wrong answer and then defend it as if it were right. Now, that speaks near and dear to me, because I'm also, currently the debate team coach at my school, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years. So I love a good debate, and I tell my students, look, the topic that we debate, you might not necessarily agree with it, but you can debate the other side, or you could debate for something you don't necessarily agree with. If you can debate both sides, that just makes you a stronger debater. So I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, it's huge. And if you can learn to argue a point that's like, and you give them something simple too, it's like, tell me why 2 + 2 is 7, and argue that point. And then all of a sudden they create these creative, constructive dialogues where they can argue a point that everybody thinks is incorrect, but then people start second guessing and questioning themselves. And so now you've created these like high class, high level communicators who are going to go out in the world and argue their point and be able to do what I did in college and basically study whatever they want and still get credit for it towards a degree.
Wow, I think that might be the emphasis for the fourth quarter here of the marketing period is negotiation and selling. Because, all right, so one of my my juniors and seniors, they're in a virtual business. So it's a fictitious business, but we treat it as if it were a real thing. Like there's actually sales. We document the sales. We run it through QuickBooks. People get paid, for their time. So there's payroll, all that. So again, it's all the nuances of running a business. In my absence, what I try to encourage my students to do is, if we're not making sales, we're not making money. And if we're not making money, eventually we're going to go out of business. Now, I guess it's hard to fully grasp because it's all, again, fictitious. And your life does not actually depend on the success of the business. Your grade might, but your life will go on. So what I challenged my students to do in my absence was make 3 outbound phone calls, sales calls, if you will. They don't actually have to generate a sale, but give me at least 3 outbound sales calls per week, per person. Now, if it again results into a sale, even better. But there's been a lot of resistance with making these outbound sales phone calls. And the calls that they have to make are to other fictitious businesses that are doing the exact same thing with different products and services. So there are high school kids as well. So all these high school kids have to do is pick up the phone and call one of their peers, wherever those peers might be, and pitch them on buying this fictitious product. But again, there's been a lot of resistance. What kind of advice can you give to me or to these kids to just pick up the phone and, to quote Leonardo DiCaprio from Wolf of Wall Street, pick up the phone and start dialing?
So yeah, that's a good question. And I think one of the things that you can do in this situation is, instead of thinking about like, oh, and usually the fear here is rejection, and it's the fear that I don't have the pitch right. And so what I say is, it's not about the pitch. It's not about a canned statement. You just pick up the phone, and when someone answers, you say, hey, can you help me real quick? And they'll say, oh yeah, with what? Oh, well, I just have this thing that I help people do, and I don't know if you might be interested. You want to sound like sort of a bumbling idiot, because then people will take you more seriously and you remove sales resistance. So the big thing that I think that these kids can think about is, you don't have to be perfect on the phone. In fact, the less perfect you are and the more quote unquote dumb you sound, the more likely it is you're going to make the sale, because you're removing a wall of sales resistance on these fictitious businesses. So instead of thinking about, I have to pick up the phone and do this pitch, just pick up the phone and ask if you can help. Say, hey, can you help me real quick? And then that starts the conversation. You've already gotten deeper than most cold callers will ever get, which is like 2 or 3 seconds into the phone call. And so if you're afraid of this, just drop the worry, drop the pitch, drop the memorization. Don't even worry about what the other person's going to say. Just pick the thing up and say, hey, can you help me real quick?
Just, make it conversational. Like I've said to you before we got on, Chandler, and I've said to all my podcast guests is, some of my guests have said, all right, are we going to edit this? No, this is not edited. This is raw data, raw footage. I'm not editing anything. I try to make this as conversational, because I don't want to remove any of the authenticity that me and my guest, or my guest and I, sorry, English teachers, they're my guests and I, putting for you, the audience, is I don't want to remove any of that. I want to be me. This is me. I'm putting myself out there. And if you don't like it, then turn the channel.
Exactly. And the other thing to think about too in these scenarios is, if you're afraid to pick up the phone, and if you're afraid to dial, and if you're afraid to talk to this fictitious human on the other end of the phone, you're probably going to be afraid when something else hard presents itself. Right. And you're probably going to continue living in fear. And if you live in fear, you never make decisions. If you never make decisions, you never take chances. If you never take chances, you never win. If you don't win, you always live in mediocrity. So you kind of have to ask yourself, am I comfortable living in mediocrity, or do I actually want to be something?
Oof. Boom. I can't. Oh man, I don't want to end the podcast on it, but that was unbelievable. I love what you just said there. That was, everybody else, everybody that's listening, boom, rewind and go back to like 18 minutes right there, or 17:50. That was brilliant, Chandler. Thank you very much. We do not want to live in mediocrity. So bottom line, continue to push yourself, break down those boundaries, get out of your comfort zone, and take a chance, will you? So thank you for that, Chandler. Now, let's talk a little bit about, because it's a hot topic in my class. I'm sure it's a hot topic all over the place. You've had some involvement, I guess a side hustle, or on the side, whatever you want to call it. You've been very involved in the crypto market.
Yeah, exactly. So back in 2016, I think maybe late 2016, just before the 2017 bull market blew off the top, I was looking at Ethereum and I was like, oh, this sounds cool. It might fail. It might be this thing that doesn't work. And I asked my partner, she was like, I have no idea. You make the decision. So I bought a bunch of Ethereum at $15 a coin. And then I bought a bunch of Litecoin at $15 a coin. And turns out it was a really good decision. So that was another situation to where I was like, should I do it? I don't know. And my motto is, well, screw it. I'm going to do it anyway. And I did it anyway. And now that the first purchase, I made several in 2016, but the first one was $250, which was getting my feet wet. And in this market right now, that's been worth about $50K. So I've been able to amplify the amount that's gone up by like 20,000% just by making that one decision. And I think the biggest thing you have to think about with crypto is you have to remove the emotion from the investments. And so I have a 3-year-old daughter. We bought her, she has like a Bitcoin or half a Bitcoin or something, and we just sit on it. But the big thing you have to think about is it's not chasing fast money. If you chased fast money, you get wrecked. People will buy it, they see it dump, they sell out, they panic, and they run away, and their tears are red candles. So if you don't want your tears to be red candles, you just need to buy. And this isn't financial advice. I'm not telling people what to do, but you need to buy and then never look at it again. And then in 10 years, you'll be like, wow, that $100 I put in every couple months has now turned into 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100K. And all of a sudden now you're living the dream and you're winning. And the people who win in this market are the people who are in it for the long-term game. The people who lose are the people who try to day trade and people who try to like flip coins and just do all that stuff that doesn't really work. But it works really well if you want to get wrecked. And if you want those red candles to be those tears.
So no red candle tears, ladies and gentlemen. So again, long-term horizon, not financial advice, but I'm sure most financial advisors would tell you the same thing: is play the long game. You're going to see volatility in crypto. You're going to see volatility in real estate. You're going to see volatility in the stock market. But if you look at the long-term historical averages, over time, those have been asset classes that have generally outperformed most other asset classes. So you have to be in it for the long term. And I think most financial advisors would probably tell you the same.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that I do in crypto is when I'm looking for a project now, I have a systems mindset. And so what I do is I look at where the problems are. And so like Ethereum, I originally bought. Now I look in January or earlier this year, I looked at what were the problems with Ethereum, and it was high gas fees. Nobody wants to pay $200 for a transaction. Right. It was congestion. Nobody wants to have 74 failed transactions. And when you think at scale, nobody wants to buy a Mountain Dew and pay $80 for a transaction fee. It makes zero sense. So what I thought about was, okay, well, what solves this problem? And then early on this year, I found Matic, and I was like, okay, well, Matic it's got a really good team. It's got really good systems. It solves gas fees. It sits on top of Ethereum, so it doesn't have to be this new thing that needs to come out. And so I bought a bunch of it at like 10 cents. And Maddox peaked up at like, I don't know, it was like $3 or something. And then the next one I looked at, I was like, okay, well, what's the big thing? And I started looking at, okay, video games. Video games are going to blow up. And then so I looked at Mana, Decentraland back then, and I was like, oh, this is cool. It's a video game. It actually works. There's like almost no games or functioning projects. I was like, this one you can actually play. So then I bought a bunch of that at like 20 cents. And now that peaked up to like $4. And as soon as Facebook announced Meta. So I think one of the things that I look at too is what solves a problem that's a really big issue in the industry, and what can we get in that can sort of actually totally solve this. And then when I do take profits in crypto, and when I do actually pull money out, I put it in something called Anchor Protocol, and it just gives me 20% interest every year on the money that sits there and just stays at $1.
Wow. Well, I mean, trying to find 20% in your general bank savings account, don't hold your breath on that. Even when the Fed says they're raising rates, 20% is not going to happen unless inflation goes to, 5,000%, which, this ain't Zimbabwe. Yeah. So, again, good luck with trying to get 20% on your bank savings account.
Exactly. Unless you're in like the Russian ruble right now, then you've got 20% interest rates and you're collapsing. So, and I'm not telling anyone to buy the dip on it.
Now, I guess that's a good segue. What do you think crypto's role, or is there a role right now that's kind of unfolding as this turmoil in Russia and Ukraine is unfolding? As, like you just said, the Russian ruble has plummeted, and I believe a couple days ago, was trading for a penny. The exchange rate was a penny to the dollar. So you're seeing significant depreciation there in the Russian ruble. The stock market, I believe, in Russia has been closed, I believe, since the beginning of the week. Do you see, because of that, more of an influx of people, at least over there, in Russia and Ukraine, where that's taking place, that are gravitating more towards different cryptocurrencies and avoiding any sort of, fiat paper currency. Do you see anything like that?
Yeah, and I think the recent Bitcoin had a big price pump that went from, I don't know, 36K up to like 45 at the peak. And I think that was attributed to people in Russia moving into stable coins, because the stable coin, like US dollar tether, US dollar coin, stays at $1. So they get exposure to the dollar, they get out of the Russian economy, and they can sort of save their wealth that they have as it collapses and crumbles. And I think the same thing in Ukraine. Their economy's been collapsing and crashing because of the invasion. And so I think with both of these things happening, the people in both these countries are moving into stable coins and moving into, it sounds like even Bitcoin and all of that, to be able to hedge the massive loss that's happening because of these horrifying events. And so I think it's been a really big precipitating cycle to what we're seeing right now, where Bitcoin's had a bit of a pump.
Wonderful, wonderful insight. We're getting short on time, Chandler. And again, this is how most of my podcasts go. And again, like I said it before, try to be authentic as possible. And, after great conversations with entrepreneurs of all walks of life, we fast forward and here we are. We're 26 minutes in, and we appreciate your time here this afternoon, Chandler. So, to end our conversation, again, you gave us a wonderful insight from crypto to, following your passion, being able to negotiate, great insight. Any final parting words or piece of advice for my high school audience?
Yeah, my last piece of advice for everybody listening to this is always expect a no, and always be prepared for a no, and then always be okay with a no, always be okay with failure, always be okay with the idea that something might not work, because the things that don't work allow you to learn, and when you learn, you grow, and when you grow, you get better. When you get better, you actually achieve mastery in what you're doing. So it's okay to get a no. It's okay to get rejected, because that makes you better overall. And I know it's challenging in the social environment that high school kids live in, but if you can learn to expect that and learn to embrace that when you get into the real world, when you get into the business world, when you get into college, you're going to be an unstoppable force, because it's not about what you know. It's not about what you've learned. We only retain about 10% of what we learn. It's about what you can do in terms of how you can communicate with people. Your quality of your communication dictates the quality of your life. So learn that now, master it, and you can create the future that you want, and you can literally do anything.
Beautifully stated. So again, invaluable insight from Chandler Walker. It's been a pleasure having Chandler on the show. We're going to have to circle back and get Chandler back on the show. That was wonderful pieces of advice from Chandler Walker. So this is your host, Wandy, signing off with Chandler Walker. God bless.